Deleted author. The lighthouse flickered, the life seemingly sputtering out of it. The lighthouse keep scurried inside in an attempt to fix it as the storm continued to roll in. Once the bulb was once again replaced, the keep realized he only had one bulb remaining in storage to last him a week. The keep ventured outside again, trying to gauge the arrival of the storm and how soon he would have to batten down the hatches for some time. His wonder was almost immediately answered by a deep rumbling coming from the deep sea itself. The keep ran back inside fast as he could as the rain and thunder began to pour down on the unassuming island. The lighthouse began to flicker and sputter once again. As the keep locked and sealed the storm doors, he climbed the stairs to the top, only to realize that his last bulb, his only backup, it was gone. The keep turned the lighthouse inside out in search of it, to no avail. The light continued to flicker for several hours as lightning shook the island to its very core. The keep cowered at the top, the light his only respite. There it goes. With one final sputter and an ear-splitting shatter, the keep's last hope was gone. Now shrouded in total darkness, the keep could only hope the rumble on the island's crags were being caused by the storm and not something more sinister. A few more minutes of silence passed. Suddenly, a deep groan echoed from the sea. As it did, the lighthouse crackled to life one final time, giving the keep enough time to see an absolutely enormous tentacle slap the surface of the island, dislodging some rocks from its sides. The keep instinctively backed himself up to the wall, as far away from whatever that was as possible. The light dissipated as quickly as it came. Another tentacle rocked the island to its core. Fear flashed in the keep's eyes. Deep fear, deepest known to all mankind. Fear of the unknown. Suddenly, a third tentacle came crashing in, shaking the entire island, along with the lighthouse, from its earthly foundation and into the deep sea below. The island never saw the light of day again. Now, merely a small whirlpool is created there occasionally, as a grim reminder to those in the know of what was and has since ceased to be in the hell that is these waters. The Lighthouse by Conformistwithcause. Sarah rubs her eyes, yawning as she tries to remember how long she has left on her shift. At least it's a quiet night so far. I'll just do a quick check and get some coffee, she thought to herself, heading towards Mr. James's room. Working on the sixth-floor wing meant that Sarah got to work alone, and even her patients were quiet. Walking down the half-lit hallway, she notices an open door, and while going to close it, sees an unfamiliar young girl sitting up in her bed. "I'm sorry, sir, but visiting hours have been over for about an hour now," the nurse explained, after noticing a gentleman sitting next to the girl's bed. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I just wanted to tell my little girl a story before I left. Do you know about the fake lighthouses?" He doesn't even turn to address the nurse, just keeps looking forward. Sarah cautiously enters the room, keeping an eye on the man. "Sir, please, you'll have—" Before she can finish her sentence, she was cut off. "Just one quick story. More of a fact, really, and I will be gone." The shadowy man was forceful, yet gentle about it. Sarah stood there silently. Small coastal towns would raid and loot whatever ships wrecked on shore. Legends say they would set up these fake lighthouses. You could hear a pin drop in this room when the mystery man wasn't talking. The idea being you draw the ships into the shore and wreck them on purpose. They'd wait on the beach, kill any survivors so they could pick through the wreckage. That isn't exactly how it works, though. The light showed them where not to go. Our ancestors did something different. They put the lights out. He chuckles, almost if he is reminiscing. Sarah eyes the emergency button on the other side of the bed, slowly walking closer to them. We also did things a little differently. We didn't kill the survivors. We trapped them. Live meat lasts better during the summer. Sir, I really think you should get going now. Sarah manages to get out of her lips while trembling. The little girl finally opens her mouth. Can you see the scary man too? 'Cause none of the other nurses can. He's just been waiting here all day. Waiting for what? Sarah notices the little girl wasn't connected to any of the monitoring equipment, and it was all turned off. The lights go dark, and the door slams shut as the girl growls,
For a ship to wash up on shore.
Beyond the depths. Author deleted. We've finally made a massive breakthrough with our new sonar technology. We've created an artificial wavelength that is harmless to any marine life in the ocean and is also undetectable by foreign radar systems. We have achieved global surveillance over the oceans without alerting the United Nations and rocking the boat, so to speak, with any hostile nations. However, strange things began to happen after our discovery. It started with the dolphins disappearing. Their numbers have drastically dropped off within the last year without explanation. Next occurrence was the whales. Their corpses started appearing in the oceans, completely obliterated, and appeared even to be mostly digested. Soon after, they even started beaching themselves at a rate we can't keep up with. If I didn't know any better, I'd think they were trying to escape from something. Something big. Things really began to spiral out of control when our cargo ships, aircraft carriers, oil tankers, and other ships started to disappear without a trace. The oceans are no longer safe to travel on, yet nothing has shown up in our surveillance that could do such damage. The real crisis began when even aircraft could not cross the oceans. Any planes or jets we tried to fly overseas disappeared without a trace. One moment we were in communication, the next, silence. The world quickly entered a state of recession, with all international trade routes blocked due to increasing unknown dangers. I decided to send a team beyond the depths with our new deep-sea submarine, capable of handling the extreme underwater pressure. It was time to get to the bottom of this global crisis. After several days, I received the most peculiar distress message. It said, Control, this is Deep Sea Alpha Team, engaging emergency protocol. We've discovered something massive. It's responded to our new sonar and is hostile. Aborting mission. Screams and alarms echoed in the message's background. After replaying the message several times, it sounds like someone mentioned a leviathan. Whatever it is, be it a leviathan or something else, I fear we may have awakened something ancient, and I fear our oceans will never be safe again. Oxygen levels critical by blackhatthehack. I am trapped down here, and all is quiet except for the mainframe alarm. Oxygen levels critical. Oxygen levels critical. I should probably explain the situation I find myself in. I am a deep-sea researcher working for a well-known oil company, and I was chosen to go to the seafloor drilling site. My mission was to observe and catalog any wildlife disturbance the drilling was causing. To say I was ecstatic would be an understatement. A small 5-man crew, including myself, would take a small sub to the bottom and make all the observations we could. Everything went as planned during the descent. We didn't notice any wildlife disturbances, but the drill pipe looked damaged. It looked as if it had been attacked by something big. Really big. So the captain and the first mate donned their deep-sea diving suits and went to inspect the damage. The captain said it looked as if it had been bear-hugged by a gorilla on steroids. Then it happened. An impossibly long, large, and muscular arm reached out of the dark and grabbed the captain by his legs. It whipped him against the ground and tossed him aside like an old toy. The first mate tried to make a run for the sub, but he didn't get very far before he was grabbed by the same monster as the captain. He tried to fight the thing, but it was futile. The beast crushed the first mate's rib cage with one move of its monstrous hand. The beast waved at the sub, much in the same way one would wave at an old friend. It grabbed the bodies of its victims and dragged them into the dark. The other 2 crew members tried to use their suits to make a run for it, but the creature didn't let them out of the light from the sub before it grabbed them. I heard their panic cries for help over the radio. That was yesterday, and now the mainframe alarm is my only company. I used the radio to call for help about an hour ago. I got a hold of the United States Coast Guard, and they said they were sending out a rescue team to save me. But I don't think they will find me alive. Oxygen levels critical. Oxygen levels critical. There is now a new alarm. It keeps repeating. Resurface immediately. I can hear a knocking on the hatch door of the sub. I hope it's the Coast Guard. I mean, after all, the oxygen levels are critical. The Deep Dark Sea. Author unknown. I am a marine biologist that works for a small government-funded agency that over time has been losing our grants slowly but surely. At the time we were exploring the abnormal geologic activity above the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the Pacific Ocean, or technically, really any ocean. Our mission was simple: to descend to about 700 meters, 2,300 feet, below the ocean surface in specialized atmospheric diving suits, with handheld equipment to measure any changes in readings. For the past 2 days, our boat's seismograph has been picking up strange readings, and while there was rumor our team had a deep-sea robot on its way, like I mentioned previously, our funding was low, and if we ever saw that piece of equipment, all of us would have been extremely surprised. Two of us were chosen to take the trip, me and a fellow biologist, Amelia. Now let me explain why I was more excited than usual to take this deep sea dive. Our team consisted of 6 men and 2 women, Amelia and Samantha. Samantha was your stereotypical marine biologist, rather plain and clumsy, with pale white skin, kinky red hair, and a boyish figure that was both doughy but lacking in curves. Now Amelia, on the other hand, was her polar opposite and exclusively received all of the male attention on our missions. Unfortunately for the men, she laughed off all of our advances. A large sparkling rock glistened on her left ring finger, essentially acting as her chastity belt. Anyway, Amelia and I suited up, wearing our specialized suits that allowed us to descend to great depths. In one hand we held heavy-duty dive lights, in the other lightweight seismology equipment, and as we continued our descent, the light of the sun began to diminish. While the ocean above us flourished with life, the deeper we sank, the less wildlife was visible. I generally didn't specialize in deep-sea diving, and while Amelia continued on with ease, I noticed how eerie it was to be surrounded by such a vast emptiness. The darkness that enveloped us was both claustrophobic and infinite, although even as I write these words, I cannot describe how absolutely alone, tiny, and insignificant I felt. We were at about 650 meters now, and while the equipment was definitely picking up something irregular, there was nothing visible when we pointed our high-beam dive lights downward. There was only the black open sea, filled with looming murky dark water that obstructed our view of the bottom of the trench, obstructed our view of anything. Every 30 seconds or so, Amelia and I would shine our flashlights into each other's faces to exchange hand signals and make sure the other was okay. I decided it was time to head upwards back to the boat and shine my light onto Amelia's beautiful, angelic face. Illuminated with light, I caught her face just in time to see the panic in her eyes before she was suddenly dragged downwards, being pulled underneath an unimaginable speed. Panicking, I dove after her, letting go of my equipment in order to swim faster, hoping I could catch her before she disappeared forever. I couldn't see what was pulling her down, only her flailing arms as she fought with all her might to get away. Through the silence of the sea, I could faintly hear her muffled screaming through her highly padded suit. Swimming as fast as I possibly could, I finally managed to catch up with her and gripped onto one of her gloved hands. Yanking with all of my strength, I tried to pull her upwards, but whatever had a hold of Amelia was not letting go. She continued to plummet, and now attached to her, I was being pulled downwards as well, feeling the water rush past me at an unimaginable speed. I could feel my grip on Amelia's hand slipping away, and in one last attempt to save her, I sacrificed the flashlight in my right hand, struggling to grab onto her. I had been a second too late, and she slid out of my grasp, disappearing forever beneath me. Amelia's screams faded out, and now the remaining light from my flashlight was gone, the device quickly plummeting to the bottom of the sea. By then, there was nothing left. Nothing but darkness. The Terror in the Caribbean by the Prowler. The world's oceans are vast and beneficial to our way of life, but they also hold mysteries that can't be explained. The Bermuda Triangle, for instance, is one, plus countless of other mysterious disappearances of vessels throughout the history of time, across the world's many bodies of water, and other strange aquatic phenomena that cannot be explained. Below the surface of the water is just as mysterious, however, maybe even more so. There are depths man cannot travel to, and who knows what lurks in those uncharted depths. Through the annals of man and its history's tales have been told of giant sea creatures, the likes that could not be believed unless you saw them with your own eyes, predatory giants of the deep, terrors of the sea, destroying anything that crosses their paths. Are these just ancient sailor superstitions, or did these beasts actually exist? And if so, do any of these creatures still reside at the bottom of the unexplored ocean floor? Regions all over the world who share coastal fronts with our vast oceans all have a legend to tell, from ghosts to bloodthirsty tempting sirens, mysterious creatures that stalk the shores, strange disappearances that cannot be explained, and the like. Are any of these phenomena true, or are they just figments of superstitious people's imaginations, just ancient folklore of tales handed down through the generations as facts? Or is there true terror on our seas? I know of one to be absolutely true, for I survived its clutches. Off the shores of a small island in the Caribbean it resides, only coming out during the storm season. When the skies begin to darken and the thunder begins to clap, there you'll find it, floating across the warm Caribbean waters. It's a mass of green, blue, and black, a sludge-like substance that's elastic and takes shape of whatever it wraps itself around, draining whatever it touches of life. I was with my crew and family that day, that horrible, fateful day I ran into the floating mass of death. We were cataloging and researching the mass coral reef off the island, along with studying its shark population. We were out there for hours. It was a successful day of research. Then I don't know what happened. We got lost in the day's success. Careless, or both. The radar showed a storm front moving in. We thought we had enough time to get back to shore, but we were wrong. The storm fell upon us faster than we realized. We still had people in the water, collecting samples, when the mysterious mass was first spotted by myself on top the ship. It came out of nowhere and just hovered in place atop the reef. Davis, my lead researcher, spotted the colorful mass on his way back to the boat. He started moving toward it, wanting to, of course, take a sample of this strange substance we found ourselves in the presence of, floating on top the water. I at first had no fears or doubts as Davis moved toward the mass, but as he got mere inches from the substance and reached out his arm, holding his sample cup, I became uneasy. Right as I screamed for him to back away, it latched onto his arm. Then, seemingly in a blink of an eye, it wrapped itself completely around him. We could all hear his muffled cries for help. His screams were excruciating to listen to. Davis's thick mass began to shrivel and shrink beneath the mass's embrace, completely draining his body of its nutrients. I then screamed for everyone else to get out of the water, to swim for their lives as fast as they could. I thought with the mass's size that it would be slow-moving, and that everyone could outswim it. But I was wrong, dead wrong. As everyone began to swim, the mass separated and moved as quick as anything I've ever seen in the water. It's as if the frantic movement from everyone trying to get away agitated the mass, or set off some rapid predatory instinct. Its sludge-like substance then stretched itself like spider's web, and one by one latched onto everyone who was in the water. Like an anaconda's grip, it wrapped itself around everyone I knew. I watched in horror as it drained the life from my wife and child. The sounds of their bones snapping and horrific screams still haunt my nightmares. I could do nothing. Everyone was dead, and I stood frozen in fear. I saw the mass start to move towards me, and the boat. That's when I snapped to and got the hell out of there. When I returned to shore, of course, no one believed what had happened. All except the local fishermen and seamen of the area. They knew I wasn't lying. They knew what lurks in the water off that inhabitable island. Officials of the area want to sweep it under the rug because they don't want to hurt tourism. But I remain. Even though I'm a shell of the man I once was, I stayed behind to warn anyone who thinks of traveling out towards the coral reef and the island, and to also try and find a way to destroy whatever the hell that thing is that killed my friends and family. The locals call the mass the Drudge Mire. It makes me wonder about the other oceanic mysteries. Are there more things like this? Are they the reason why there's so many disappearances throughout the seas? What else is real out there? What mysteries does the ocean truly hold? The Ship of Souls by the Prowler. There's a ship that sailors whisper about in passing, a terror on the seas they dare never to speak of above hushed tones, for they fear they will be ushered away by the merchant of death in his galley of woe, a ship that only sails on the seas of despair, materializing through the years only when tragedy has struck. Its captain and crew just ghostly shrouds, looking for more souls to usher through to the afterlife, cursed with their task for all eternity for the horrible crimes they committed in life. Whenever a tragedy happens upon the sea, the ship appears, with its eerie hue of blue and green glowing into the darkened night as it creeps closer and closer to collect new souls. Most sailors who traverse the open sea believe the ghostly ship's origins to be that of an old British privateer vessel called the Tears of the Sea. Its captain and crew were rumored to have gone rogue and became bloodthirsty and crazed, and destroyed any ship that crossed its path, killing anyone found aboard. They continued their destructive ways for years, until they were chased into a storm by the British Navy, never to be seen again, but believed to have struck a formation of rocks and sunk somewhere near the Bahamas. Others believed the cursed ship to be the old Spanish galley, La Destructora, a ship whose captain and crew went rogue and deserted the Spanish Navy. Filled with greed, they went in search for the fabled Fountain of Youth. It's rumored they found it on an island off the shores of South America, guarded by an unknown tribe, but were eventually cursed when they stole ancient untold treasures from the tribe. It is said the Spanish galley did not get far from the island before it mysteriously sunk, taking its entire crew with it. Accounts of the identity of the ship differ from the few survivors who have claimed to have seen it. There is, however, no doubt, especially to the superstitious mind of the ordinary sailor, that there is a cursed ship that stalks the waters of the briny sea. And if you happen to be aboard a vessel that is struck by some sort of tragedy, the ship of souls may come for you. Maria. I knew there was little hope for the ship. I watched helplessly through the lighthouse windows as waves thrashed the vessel without mercy. What good would my light do for them? The wind and rain slammed against the glass hard enough that I feared it may shatter. I could only imagine what the unfortunate souls aboard were experiencing on the torrential seas. I held my position all through the early morning hours, hoping against all odds they would survive the squall. The ship grew smaller and smaller as the vicious breakers pulled it further from shore. Once I lost sight, I knew they were doomed. As the storm subsided and the sun began to rise, I surveyed the sea from the rocky coast. It was hard to believe these tranquil waters were the very same responsible for the violent outburst hours before. I'm not ashamed to say I wept once the tide began bringing debris to the banks. The wreckage brought me to my knees with anguish. The loneliness of my rocky outpost made their demise feel like I had lost someone close to me. I gathered some of the larger pieces, planning to build a memorial on the beach, when something caught my eye. It was moving quickly through the water. I squinted to make out what it was, and realized it was a wooden chest. The water beneath began bubbling and foaming, moving ever closer to where I stood. Startled, I let the wood fall from my arms as something slowly surfaced. Eyes stared back at me, then faces emerged. I felt frozen to the spot as dozens of swollen, discolored bodies clambered up the rocks with contorted limbs, and I tripped backwards, falling to the sand in a heap. A mob of drowned men and women surrounded me. They looked at me indifferently while I feebly begged them for mercy. Finally, the crowd parted down the middle, and a couple approached, carrying the chest between them. They placed the heavy trunk at my feet. Confused, I looked up at them, still fearing for my life, when an unmistakable sound came from within. I gasped as the man lifted the lid and the woman pulled out a bundle of blankets. The swaddled infant cooed, reaching up for its mother's hair. The father stood behind the mother, gazing down at their beloved child with smiles on their faces. After some time, the mother crouched down, gently handing the child over to me. The father placed his hand on my shoulder, looking deep into my eyes, wordlessly communicating his wishes. I nodded to him, the only gesture I was capable of. He nodded back, and the mob turned away. I held the little girl to my chest as the corpses returned to the sea, finally looking down at her once they disappeared from sight. Enormous turquoise eyes stared back at me beneath a wild mane of curls. The crashing of the tide whispered her name to me. Maria. Maria. I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel for your overwhelming generosity. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories and poems to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess.ofdarkness and Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. I want to thank all my listeners for your kindness, your encouragement, and your support. It means the world to me. Thank you for joining me. Until next time.